Hello, and welcome to the Channel of Stories. Dear listeners, before we start the story, please subscribe to the channel and give this video a like and share in the comments where you are from. Thank you. Here we go.
I wasn't even supposed to be performing that night. The booking got messed up, something about a calendar error, and the bartender said I could have the slot if the other guy no-shows. The slot was 8:15 p.m. on a Tuesday, sandwiched between happy hour and karaoke. And the guy did no show. So I stood there tuning a borrowed guitar with fraying strings, in a bar that smelled like moldy lemons and wet leather. There were 6 working speakers, all pointing in random directions. 3 tourists sat nursing watery beers, visibly bored. One was scrolling through her phone. The other 2 looked like they were half asleep. My mic buzzed when I touched it. The lights were too bright and made the room look like a hospital waiting room with worse furniture. But I played anyway. I always played anyway. My hands trembled like they had stage fright of their own. I wasn't new to singing in bars, but I still hadn't learned how to stop caring. Maybe that's what made the songs hit the way they did. Maybe people could feel how much it mattered to me, or maybe they didn't feel anything at all. I strummed the opening chords of a song I'd written 2 nights ago. Something soft and aching. About starting over without knowing where the finish line even is. I never looked up when I sang it, I didn't want to see their faces. Indifference was more painful than heckling. But when I finished the last line, someone clapped. Once. Twice. Slow, deliberate. I looked up, startled, like I'd been caught doing something I shouldn't. And there he was. Eli Rowe. Sitting in the far corner booth, half in shadow, a whiskey glass in front of him, and blood trickling from one knuckle. His hoodie was pulled low over his face, but I knew who he was. You don't mistake Eli Rowe. Not once you've heard his voice. The kind of voice that made you stop breathing mid-song. The kind of name people whispered in green rooms like it was a ghost. Rumors followed him like a second shadow, drugs, fights, late-night call-ins, near-death collapses mid-tour. But in that moment, he didn't look like a rumor. He looked tired. Tired and wired, like something had just broken inside him, and he was trying not to let the pieces show. He stood up and walked toward me, one hand cradling the other, blood pooling around a torn knuckle. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse and quiet. Did you write that last one? I nodded, suddenly unsure of everything. You've got something in your voice, he said. Something that pulls. I opened my mouth to say thank you, but nothing came out. So I nodded again. He tilted his head and looked around the bar, like he'd just realized where he was. You don't belong in this place, he said. Let me take you somewhere bigger. Then he dropped a crumpled napkin on the stage with his number scrawled across it. He didn't wait for an answer. Just walked out, slow and steady, like he had all the time in the world or none at all. I stared at the napkin for a long time after that. I didn't believe it. I thought maybe I'd hallucinated the whole thing. But a week later, I found myself on a plane to Nashville. And my world was never the same again. Great. Here's the fully expanded. It didn't feel real until the lights hit my eyes. 1 week after that strange night in the bar, I found myself standing backstage at the Ryman, the same Ryman where legends stood. My name wasn't on the posters. I wasn't part of the lineup. I was just Eli's guest, a placeholder in an industry that didn't know I existed. Yet, I should have been ecstatic. Grateful. Starstruck. But all I felt was a buzzing kind of fear, the kind that makes your limbs heavy and your voice shrink. The kind of fear that tells you you're about to be found out. I could hear the crowd already, muffled but pulsing with energy. Real people. People who paid to be here. I wasn't even sure if they'd let me on stage legally. Eli stood beside me, strumming his guitar absent-mindedly. He had this strange calm about him, like storms couldn't touch him anymore. His hoodie was gone, replaced by a fitted black shirt and scuffed boots. Still a little bruised from whatever fight he'd walked out of a week ago. Still beautiful, in that dangerous, hollowed-out way. He caught me looking at the curtain and smiled. "Just look at me," he said, voice low. "Forget the rest." Then someone called our names, and we walked out. I couldn't breathe. The lights blinded me. The mic felt heavier than it should have, like it knew I didn't belong. But then Eli started to play, the first few chords of the song I'd written in that awful bar, and I looked at him. Only him. And I remembered. I remembered the night I wrote it, sitting on the floor with my knees pulled to my chest, whispering lyrics into my phone recorder because I didn't have a notebook. I remembered how my voice cracked when I sang the bridge for the first time. How I almost deleted it. How I told myself it wasn't good enough. But now, here it was. On this stage. And when I opened my mouth to sing, something clicked. My voice shook, not from fear but from recognition. I knew this moment. I'd dreamed it 100 different ways. It had always looked glossier in my mind, less sweaty, less frantic. But it was mine. Halfway through the chorus, I saw someone in the third row crying. I didn't even realize I'd been crying too. We finished the song, and the place exploded. People stood. People shouted my name, or tried to. They didn't know it yet, but they wanted to. Backstage, I collapsed onto a crate and tried to process what just happened. Eli handed me a water bottle and grinned. "Told you," he said. "You were born for this." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. Awesome. Here's the fully expanded. There was no slow unraveling. No cautious, hand-in-hand walk into love. With Eli, I fell like a building collapsing, all at once, loud and messy, no time to brace for impact. I didn't even realize I was falling until I was already buried in him. We didn't have a beginning, not a clean one. After Nashville, things blurred. One gig turned into three. Three turned into a tour. Tour turned into a habit, of waking up in hotel rooms with tangled sheets, of passing a guitar back and forth between shows, of writing lyrics on diner napkins. Falling for Eli felt like trying to memorize a song you only heard once. You knew the melody, but the words slipped every time you tried to sing them. He had this way of leaning into me when I was talking, like every word out of my mouth mattered. And then the next minute, he'd disappear for hours with no explanation. He'd say things like, "You light up when you talk about music," or "Your voice makes people feel like they've been forgiven." And I'd believe him, even when he couldn't quite meet my eyes when he said it. But off stage, Eli was chaos. He'd forget entire days. Miss soundchecks. Show up to interviews smelling like whiskey and smoke, still humming a song he hadn't finished. He'd pace our hotel rooms like the walls were closing in. He'd run baths he never got in. Some nights, he wouldn't sleep. He'd just sit on the edge of the bed, staring at the carpet like it was trying to tell him something. I didn't know what he was running from. But I knew he was running fast. And still, he made space for me. He memorized the way I took my coffee. He made playlists for me before I even told him my favorite bands. He read my lyrics like scripture. Sometimes he'd cry without warning when I played something new. "I wish I could write like that," he'd whisper, like it was a confession. I told him he already did. We weren't perfect. We burned too hot, too fast. Arguments flared out of nowhere, about nothing, about everything. I'd get mad when he missed sound checks. He'd get quiet when I got praised. But always, we found our way back. Usually through music. That was our language. When words failed, when pride got in the way, we played. And something about our voices together, it fixed things. At least for a while. We made love like we were trying to disappear into each other. Hungry, urgent, tender. He'd hold me like he was scared I'd vanish. I'd trace the lines of the lyrics on his arms. We never said "I love you," not out loud. But it was in the way he held my guitar before I went on stage. The way I stayed up just to make sure he made it back to the room. We lived in that blur for months. Me, rising. Him, slipping. But together we made something that felt holy. Even if it couldn't last. Here's the fully expanded. The spotlight is addictive. It warms you, flatters you, tricks you into thinking you're safe. When the crowd is cheering, when your name is echoing back at you like a prayer, it feels like you matter. Like you're finally enough. And for a while, that high drowned out everything else. But the spotlight also casts shadows. And in those shadows, Eli was shrinking. The more I rose, the more he recoiled. The crowds started chanting for me before they called his name. After shows, people pushed past him to get to me. Agents approached me in green rooms. Magazine photographers wanted solo shots. Suddenly, I was the draw. At first, Eli played along. He'd laugh and say, "Told you so," or call me the star of the show. But I could see it, the way his jaw clenched when someone said I had the voice of a generation. The way he stayed behind longer and longer after gigs. The way he started sleeping through the mornings. I didn't know how to reach him anymore. I tried. God, I tried. I'd crawl into bed and press my forehead to his shoulder, whisper, "You okay?" And he'd nod, eyes open in the dark. "Just tired," he'd say. But he wasn't tired. He was disappearing. The drinking got worse. Quiet at first, little flasks tucked into guitar cases, bar tabs that kept climbing. Then louder, missed rehearsals, slurred sound checks, stumbles on stage that we had to turn into jokes. And still, he loved me. That's the part people never understood. He loved me with this desperate, beautiful ache. He still memorized my set lists. Still tuned my guitar before I walked out. He still wrapped his arms around me after every show, even when the applause was clearly meant for me. He still tucked me in like I was made of glass. But he was breaking. And I was growing. It's a strange thing, to be ascending while someone you love is falling. It fills you with guilt you can't explain. Like your success is killing them. Like your joy is selfish. I'd stand on stages with thousands of faces looking up at me, and all I could think was, is he okay? Did he eat today? Is he still in the building? One night, I found him in the green room, slumped on the floor with a cigarette burned down to the filter. He looked up at me, eyes red, and said, "I can't hear it anymore." What? The music. Yours. Mine. It's all static now. And still, he smiled. Still kissed my knuckles like I was holy. "Don't ever stop singing," he whispered. "Even if I can't listen." And I knew, I was losing him. But I didn't know how fast. Here's the fully expanded. When you love someone who's slipping away, you start collecting their presence like artifacts. You take mental snapshots. The way they hum when they think no one's listening. The mess of half-eaten room service trays and wrinkled lyric pages. The way their voice lingers even after they leave the room. I started writing without him. Not on purpose, it just happened. He was disappearing, and I needed something to hold. So I wrote. Quietly, in notebooks I hid at the bottom of my bag. Lyrics poured out like they were waiting their whole lives to exist. At first, he was proud. He'd find my scraps of paper, read them aloud, smile like it hurt. "That line," he'd say, "that one's going to make someone cry." But slowly, his interest shifted. Not out of malice. It was more like fatigue. Emotional, physical, spiritual fatigue. He stopped reading the lyrics. Stopped singing along. He'd nod when I shared something new, but his eyes would drift. His fingers would tap against the table like he was chasing a different beat. Then one day, I found it, his notebook. It was under the hotel bed, half crushed by an empty duffel bag. He didn't hide it. He just didn't carry it anymore. The cover was frayed, the pages bent. I hesitated before opening it, like I was crossing into sacred ground. Inside were unfinished songs. Dozens of them. Some were barely titles. Others had verses and no chorus. There were doodles in the margins, stars, eyes, hands holding nothing. One song had my name in it, repeated like a heartbeat. She sings me clean. She sings me whole. She sings me into something better than I am. And on the last full page, in ink that looked like it was scribbled in a hurry, I found a line that stopped my heart. I love her more than I know how to show. I closed the notebook and sat there for a long time. That night, I asked him if he was okay. He said he didn't know. I told him I found the notebook. He looked away. Did you read it? Yeah. He nodded. I was gonna finish those. Maybe we still can. He didn't answer. But he took my hand, and we lay in silence, the notebook between us like a ghost. Here's the fully expanded. Austin. A benefit concert for wildfire relief. The lineup was stacked, chart toppers, newcomers, icons, and somehow, we were the closing act. I remember standing side stage, dress clinging to my skin from nerves and thinking, this is too big. This is too much. Eli stood behind me, unusually quiet. His hand rested lightly on my lower back, grounding me. We hadn't spoken much that day. Not because we were fighting, we weren't. There was just a quiet between us. Not tense. Not cold. Just quiet. He'd barely touched his guitar all week. He'd started walking the city alone, disappearing for hours. When I asked where he went, he'd shrug. Nowhere that matters. But he always came back. Until the day I worried he wouldn't. We walked out onto the stage to a wave of sound so loud I nearly staggered. The crowd looked endless, a sea of faces, lights, signs, tears. Eli glanced at me, smiled weakly, and said, "One more for the road." I didn't know what he meant. But I smiled back. He opened with the chords to our very first song. The one we wrote together in a hotel room, when we still thought this life could fix us. The one we recorded in a single take because it felt too fragile to touch again. And we sang it like it was the last thing we'd ever do. Halfway through, he stopped playing. He just stood there, guitar hanging loose at his side, watching me. I thought something was wrong. I thought he forgot the chord. But then he nodded, a soft, almost imperceptible nod, like he was saying goodbye. I finished the verse alone. The crowd didn't notice. But I did. Backstage, he didn't say much. He handed me a bottle of water, his hand trembling slightly. He looked around the dressing room like he didn't recognize it. Then he pulled a small notebook from his coat pocket and handed it to me. "It's yours now," he said. I opened it. Inside, our first song, in his handwriting. Every line perfect. Every chord annotated. Notes in the margin about tempo and harmony. And on the last page, a single line. "You were always the star. I was just the night sky trying to hold you." I looked up, eyes burning, but he was already walking away. That night, he didn't come back to the hotel. That was the last time I saw Eli Rowe. Here's the fully expanded. The next morning, I woke up alone. At first, I wasn't worried. Eli disappeared sometimes, for coffee, a walk, a mood swing. He wasn't the type to leave notes or texts. I told myself he'd show up grinning, carrying 2 croissants, and a ridiculous story about getting lost in a bookstore or chasing a stray cat. But by noon, he hadn't come back. By 3 p.m., his phone was off. By 6, I was calling everyone, his manager, our driver, the hotel front desk. No one had seen him. No one knew where he'd gone. By 9, I was in a stranger's car, driving to the last address on his Lyft app. It was a motel. Not the kind with room service and marble lobbies. The kind with flickering vacancy signs and rust-colored carpet. I knocked on the door. No answer. I begged the front desk to let me in. They refused. So I waited. The police came an hour later. They told me what they found. I didn't hear most of it. Words like overdose and non-responsive blurred together. I remember a paramedic saying, "He didn't leave a note," like that made it worse. Or better. I don't know. People started talking. Whispers turned into theories. Some said it was an accident. Some said it was a choice. All I know is that Eli Rowe, the man who sang me out of obscurity, who bled beauty and madness into every chord, was gone. And the world got quieter. It wasn't just that he was dead. It was the absence. The hole. The lack of him. No more half-finished songs left on hotel desks. No more midnight hums from the bathroom while he brushed his teeth. No more whispers before shows. No more "just look at me" when the lights got too bright. I kept performing, at first because I didn't know what else to do. The stage felt different. Bigger. Lonelier. I'd wait for his harmony out of habit, then remember. He wasn't there. I stopped writing for a while. The words dried up. The melodies felt cheap. Everything I sang sounded like someone else wrote it. But people still came. The shows still sold out. I smiled. I waved. I thanked them. And then I'd go backstage and cry into my knees. Grief is weird. It doesn't show up politely. It barges in. It leaves the door open. It rearranges the furniture. It changes the key of every song. But eventually, I found my voice again. Not the old one. A new one. Hoarse but honest. And I sang. Not for the crowd. Not for the label. For him. Here's the fully expanded. Every show, I leave a mic on stage. It stands next to mine, untouched. No cable. No sound check. Just there. At first, people thought it was symbolic, some dramatic artistic choice. A nod to my past. But it's not that. It's space. It's breath. It's a placeholder for the harmony that never arrives. It's for him. Sometimes, when the crowd is quiet enough and the lights hit just right, I turn my head slightly toward it. And for a split second, I feel like he's there. Just behind me. Just out of reach. There was one night in Montreal, storm outside, full house inside. The electricity flickered twice mid-set. I kept playing. The sound cut out but my voice didn't. I looked toward that empty mic and I swear I heard him hum. Just one note. Just enough to make my knees shake. People think grief fades. That you tuck it away, shrink it down, file it under past. But mine lingers. Not loud, not constant. But steady. Like a harmony under every verse. There are reminders everywhere. Venues he loved. Songs we never finished. Fans who still wear his shirts. I see him in the spaces between things, the silence before a note, the pause in a lyric, the second before the applause hits. The world moved on. I didn't. Not fully. I built a new life, sure. New albums. New friends. Even new love, soft and slow and real in its own way. But Eli is the echo in every room I walk into. People ask if I regret it, the whirlwind, the chaos, the fallout. I don't. Not for a second. He broke my heart, yes. But he also gave me a stage. A voice. A reason. He made me brave. And that mic. That empty space. It's not grief on display. It's gratitude. Because I know I wouldn't be here without him. And if I stop making room for him, even just symbolically, I'm afraid I'll forget how all this began. So I keep it there. Every night. A mic no one sings into. Because sometimes the most haunting notes are the ones never sung. Here's the fully expanded. I used to think music was just what I did. Now I know it's how I survive. After Eli, everything changed, not just my career, but how I moved through the world. I started carrying myself differently. Not bigger. Not louder. Just, more deliberately. Like every step was being recorded. Like he might be watching. In the first year without him, I barely wrote. I went on autopilot, performing the old songs, dodging the hard interviews, pretending I was healing faster than I was. But something inside me itched. It started small, scribbles in hotel notepads, voice memos recorded at 2 a.m., random lyrics mumbled into coffee cups. Nothing good. Nothing finished. But it was movement. And that was enough. Then one night, in Atlanta, I sat down with my guitar and played the first 3 chords of a song I didn't know I knew. It came out all at once. A song about grief, yes. But also about resilience. About how love doesn't leave, it just changes shape. How someone can be gone but still show up in your dreams, or in the way you hum when you're nervous, or in the lyrics you didn't mean to write. That song saved me. I recorded it alone. No backup vocals. No band. Just me and a guitar in a studio with a red light blinking like a heartbeat. When it dropped, people said it felt like standing in a church. Others said it made them call someone they hadn't talked to in years. I didn't write it for the charts. I wrote it for Eli. And for me. After that, the floodgates opened. I started writing like a woman possessed, not just about him, but about everything. About the guilt of surviving. The weight of success. The exhaustion of being strong all the time. Songs about the fans who told me they cried in their cars. Songs for the girl I was before him. Songs for the girl I'm still becoming. My next album was raw. Stripped. No filters. It didn't win awards. But it healed people. Healed me. I started to feel like I was finding something new, not replacing him, not erasing him, but building a life around the outline he left behind. I don't perform those songs with flash. I don't wear glitter anymore. I stand in a circle of light, guitar in hand, and let the music speak. And when I hit that final note, I glance at the empty mic beside me. And I know. I'm not alone. Not really. Here's the final expanded chapter. Every night, I sing like he's listening. Even now, years later, cities later, lifetimes later, I still imagine Eli sitting just out of sight, backstage, legs stretched out, that familiar half-smile playing on his lips. I imagine him mouthing the words along with me, tapping the beat against his thigh, nodding in approval at the bridge we fought over for a week. He never finished his last song. I don't even know if he meant to. Some pages were scratched out so hard I couldn't read them. Others were hauntingly beautiful, fully formed verses that trailed off mid-thought. Like he was racing against something he couldn't name. And maybe he was. So now, every time I sing, I try to finish it for him. Not literally. I don't rewrite his lyrics or mimic his voice. But I build songs around the silence he left behind. Around the ideas we never got to argue about. Around the possibility that, if he were here, he'd nod and say, yeah. That's what I meant. Sometimes, when the crowd is swaying and I'm lost in the melody, I swear I can feel him, not beside me, not as a ghost but in me. In the breath between verses. In the way I strum a little harder when I'm angry. In the harmony I instinctively leave space for. That's the thing about love like his. It doesn't die. It changes. It echoes. It teaches you how to hold grief and joy in the same hand. How to make room for absence. How to sing with someone who's no longer there, and still mean every word. People ask me, do you still miss him? And I say, yes. Not every second. Not with a knife in my chest. But I miss the way he looked at me like I was a miracle. I miss the way his voice cracked on the second chorus. I miss how he used to wake me up at 3 a.m. just to tell me a line he couldn't forget. I miss the man who saw me before the world did. Who pulled me out of the shadows and said, look. You were always the star. And even though he couldn't stay, he lit a fuse in me that never went out. So now I carry the fire. I write the songs. I leave the mic. And I sing. For him. For me. For the girl who once thought she was invisible, until a broken man with bleeding knuckles whispered, let me take you somewhere bigger. He did. And I'm still there.